So, I did my paper on forensic profiling, and you know that is dear to my heart since I'm a psychology major. So yeah. What is forensic profiling? Forensic profiling is the process which is used to collect data about your crime scene, about your victim, about the offender, and it helps investigators find the offender and successfully help the investigation and to prosecute the case. Why is forensic profiling needed? Forensic profiling is vital, like for solving crimes and prosecuting your criminals. Forensic profiling is such a broad field. It includes forensic chemistry, handwriting analysis, DNA, criminal profiling, fingerprinting, and usually forensic profiling starts with an examination of the crime scene, because that's like the first thing you see whenever you get a call is you arrive to the crime scene, and they begin to look at evidence to try to help them, solve their case. Instead of looking at just surface information, like just visual things, they look at the presence of a gun, blood stains, if they can find anything that might give them DNA to help them better solve their case. They look at what kind of offender they might be dealing with. Like, you can tell a lot from a crime scene. Like, if it's really brutal, you can kind of tell that you're not dealing with and I hate to say average killer, but somebody that'll just shoot somebody, to me that's an average killer. But if you have like 97 gunshot wounds and 30 stabs, you're not dealing with a normal killer. So yeah, forensic profilers look at things like that. One of the first things you come in contact with is your victim. The problem comes in if you have no identification of your victim. If you get there, there's a body, you don't know who it is, that's a problem. So the good thing is there are a lot of ways to identify your victim. Like in class we discussed like tattoos, piercings, surgeries. But these ways are non-scientific ways to identify your victim. Like the first one is paper-based documents, which is like IDs, passports, driver license, photographs. Those are big helps. And even smart cards, which we call SIMS cards. Like, I never actually knew that they can use that to identify their victim. But if they get there and there's a phone laying next to their victim and they don't know who it is, they can possibly pull up by their SIMS card information about the victim or go through information that they might have saved to their SIMS card. So I never knew that was such a huge way. And medications. If you get there, there's a body. Matter of fact, all medications should have some kind of name on there, especially if it's prescribed. So that's a huge help also with identifying who this person is. DNA. Crimes rarely get solved without DNA. DNA is huge. DNA can be found in blood, semen, skin cells, tissue, organ, muscles, brain cells, bone, teeth, hair, saliva, mucus, feces. DNA is everywhere. When all of you leave this class, your DNA is somewhere in here. Like, it's huge with crime solving. It's actually a very tedious process to try to solve a crime without DNA because it's such a helpful thing. Yeah. DNA can also be used to link a perpetrator from one crime scene to another. Like, for instance, hair. If you find a certain hair strand at one crime scene and then you find it at another, it's a huge possibility that you may be dealing with just one killer and the crimes may actually be linked. So that's one way DNA is very helpful in solving crimes. Handwriting analysis. Handwriting analysis is another huge part of forensic profiling. It basically is usually used to determine forgery or if someone has done something illegal with documents, maybe signed something that they weren't supposed to. So it's pretty huge. Handwriting analysis is actually a field, but the problem that anybody going into this would have is science doesn't really consider it a science, so they have a problem actually being recognized, but a lot of cases have been solved due to handwriting analysis. So hopefully one day it'll be a recognized field, but as of right now, they don't get the credit that they deserve. So yeah. Here's my favorite part, criminal profiling. What is criminal profiling? Criminal profiling is, let me read you the definition, is defined as the identification of specific characteristics of an individual committing a particular crime by a thorough systematic observational process and an analysis of the crime scene, the victim, the forensic evidence, and the known facts of the crime. The act of profiling criminals is mainly used by behavioral scientists and criminologists to evaluate and possibly predict the future actions of criminals. Criminal profiling is so huge, and the reason being is because it affects so many people. Like, we look at criminal profiling and we think that it's just to see what kind of criminal we're dealing with, but researchers actually use criminal profiling to help help it from being future crimes, if that makes sense. Like, studying what kind of criminals you deal with, what kind of suspects they target, could help them to publish research and articles to keep you from being a victim. So criminal profiling is huge. Well, I kind of got ahead of myself, but I'll tell you again why profiling criminals is important. Profiling criminals actually help behavioral scientists to help victims. Many behavioral scientists even go into the study of victimology to determine what suspects look for in a victim. Victimology is the study of the victims in a number of crimes perpetrated by the same criminal. The idea of victimology is to identify similarities between each of the victims of a particular crime so that the profiler is able to identify a pattern in the criminal's approach to their crime. That's basically everything I just said. Studying criminals help you to help victims actually not be victims. It finds patterns that will link things to help victims not become victims. So this is really interesting. Some criminal profilers did research on murderers, and what they found was it's called the homicidal triad. And what that is after researching many murderers, they found 3 characteristics that seem to be common in the murderers from childhood. And the 3 are animal cruelty, bedwetting, and setting things on fire. So what they found was that these 3 things, most murderers actually had at least one of them from their childhood that would occur, which, like she mentioned about her killer wanting to strangle cats, I really thought that was interesting because animal cruelty is one of the characteristics that was discovered from criminal profilers. Any questions?